All right, for this next panel conversation, we're going to be taking audience questions. So if you haven't experienced Slido yet, you can actually open your Web Summit app, go to Slido Q&A, click on Forum, and you can submit questions for Belinda to ask the panel in this next round. So in the age of social media, personal branding is more important than ever. So how can we leverage social media to advance social change? I'm super happy to have to the stage, in conversation with Belinda Goldsmith from Thomson Reuters, co-founder of Bell & Ivy Marketing Agency, Cynthia Johnson, co-founder of the Novak Djokovic Foundation, Jelena Djokovic, and Her Royal Highness Princess Beatrice of York. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. And I'm delighted to be on stage with Cynthia, Jelena, and Princess Beatrice. We're going to be discussing today the use of social media in philanthropy, the successes, but also the challenges, and then also how you make sure you keep engagement with your audience. But first of all, I want to get the elephant in the room out of the way and say congratulations, Princess Beatrice, to your family and your sister on the wedding.
Thank you very much. It was great.
And also to Cynthia, who's just joined us straight from her honeymoon, has come to Lisbon to join us today. So congratulations on your wedding as well. So Princess Beatrice, if I could start with you. Yep. As a member of one of the most widely watched royal families in the world, what advice were you given as a child about how to use social media?
Well, I think, in the age we are now, I think, social media and the presence of social media, I feel like we have such a great opportunity to use it to be able to curate your own messages, to be able to really, truly use it as a powerful force for good. I think that the most important thing, though, is that we can give young people the tools to deal with it. I know that in my own life, some of the greatest messages that we've been able to talk about we've done that ourselves. I think my generation is the generation that focuses on social media, that to use it as a tool for good. So I think as long as the message is authentic and you're really talking to the root of the issues, then you really can inspire young people to communicate and be empowered as well.
Did you use social media much as a child yourself?
Facebook came out when I was 18, so I had some of the challenges with learning what it was like to use a new platform as well. And I think bridging the gap between social media as well as regular media, that was actually quite challenging when you want to really feel like you're contributing and being a part of it, and also as a user as well as a kind of network and a message platform. I think when I first started using social media, I was a regular user, like any regular 18-year-old girl, and some of the challenges of that were other media outlets wanting to pry, and I think as we grow up, I think we learn that curating your messages and being very clear about what you want to achieve in the world, and using this great outlet as a force for good is very important.
So I expect you became quite good on using privacy blocking, things like that as well, to make sure you could control it.
Yeah, privacy is something that I think probably a lot of people in this room are dealing with as well. We've got a lot of debates now around data privacy and making sure that what we're putting out online is respectful. And I think one of the big focuses that I want to make sure that young people feel like they have the tools in order to feel not only safe online, but that they can use it as a powerful force for good. They can share their stories, but also feel protected. We've talked a little bit about what it's like to be bullied in the public domain, and I would like to think that even though that is a use for good, that we can make sure that young people have the tools to thrive with this as with their support system.
Right. Now, of course, you're using social media in a different way as part of your professional life with Infinity and also all the charity work you do, Big Change Charitable Trust, and all the other charity work you do. How important is it to use social media in philanthropy?
I think, social media, I think any media is a great way to, it's a great way to curate your own messages. And I think when it comes from you and it comes from your heart, that's kind of the raw essence of what you're trying to achieve. So every time, we've been very lucky over the years that we've been building our foundations at the same time that, Facebook and Instagram and these are also, been building up their usership. And, when you look at some of the great accounts that you can sort of collaborate with, and I believe in collaboration and also really focus on some of the key messages, then social, you can really make sure that your message is out there and it's curated.
Yes. Jelena, of course, married to one of the world's best tennis players. You built the foundation together, focused very much on helping children in preschool education. How important has social media been for you to build the foundation?
Well, the foundation was founded 10 years ago. Back then, we didn't have such a heavy use of social media. Today, I don't even know how we did before, in a way. Social media has become such a big part of what we do that I don't even know how anything else existed before. It definitely adds a lot to our foundation, especially to communicate to the parents, to the teachers, to share all the examples, good examples and ideas, because in those critical times where the children's brains are developing the most, and that is from 0 to 6, that is the time for us to make the biggest impact in their lives and also for all the society, because when we put strong foundations for them, when they develop in the good human beings, then we are preventing all these horrible things that are happening in the world today. If you see a lot of depression, suicidal thoughts, wars, anger, hatred, not to mention crime rate that is going crazy. So those are all the things that we missed out preventing on the crucial early stage of the lives of the family, because that's when the families are most vulnerable. When the child is born, that's where we're completely lost and we have no idea what to do. I can say that for me as a parent. I'm struggling every day to meet my expectations and then the expectations of the public. So overall, it's important for us to share with everyone and inspire them.
And what examples do you have of where social media has been successful for the foundation?
Yeah, we have great examples. Say there was a flood disaster in our country a few years back, and my husband has won the tournament in Rome. And because we are a small country, we come from Serbia, and the disasters that happen in our country are not so interesting for the wider population. While we needed help, we were stuck. And so he invited, through the media, his press conference, he invited journalists to write about that. He invited his fans to share, and he donated $500,000 of his prize money, which incentivized all the other people who followed our foundation to match or, and we raised $2 million for this relief fund, and which was really, really important.
Right, great.
Thank
Cynthia,
you.
an expert in branding and in social media as well. How is social media reshaping philanthropy?
I think it's a really interesting question, because it used to be that celebrity status or having a certain amount of reach, a lot of causes and a lot of organizations would reach out to people, and you could really support and back lots of them, and it could be used as a tool to build your brand without necessarily having as much active work being put into the organization. And now we're seeing is that people have to really choose things they care about, and they have to step aside and step away from the message being about them, because it's not. They have to really care and invest time and understand what they're talking about, and that is having a greater impact in areas that I think the population cares about, because that's where you're going to want to spend your time. On the other side, there's so many more resources now for raising and donations, for raising awareness for events, contacting people that may or may not be interested. And also, it's easy to read who may or may not be interested in the cause that you're supporting. So it's very easy to go to someone who maybe is a celebrity or has a following, go to their page and say, well, this person has children, they may care about this cause. So you can start to identify influence much more easily than it was before.
So what advice do you give someone trying to set up to use social media for philanthropy as opposed to someone just seeking a following?
The first thing to do is create a set of goals. So for philanthropy is very broad. What we want to say is we're trying to raise awareness, we're trying to raise money, we're trying to change something very specific. Start there. The second thing is pick a platform. Pick one platform that you are going to run the majority of everything you're doing through. If you try to be in several places at once, it doesn't look genuine, first of all, because the same message is being told. And when you are someone that people follow because it's you, if they're following you in multiple places, it gets a little distracting if this message is across the board. It looks like you're not putting it out. So pick one place. And then the last thing is really understand that it's not about you. It has to be about the message. People will come at you if it doesn't sound like you are being genuine and you really care. And make sure you're putting out the progress. Every little tiny success, if you do care, share that with your audience because they'll start to get excited as they see progress. But again, the very first thing is make sure you know what those stepping stones are so that you can share it with the people that are involved and following you, and so that you're actually achieving something and it's not just a blanket post.
We mentioned some of the challenges here, and Princess Beatrice, you mentioned bullying. You've spoken previously about being bullied yourself on social media. How did you personally deal with that? And what would your advice be to any young children, girls, boys, who are also being cyberbullied?
I think, the nature of social media now, this is something that we're all very, very focused on. I think in all of the work that I'm doing, I want to make sure that young people feel like they have the tools. As you said, looking at what the messages are, and how you can be there for other young people that are going through something. We do need to stand up against cyberbullying as well. We need to make sure that young people have the tools in order to be safe online. And I think, this wonderful creation, which is the World Wide Web, which Sir Tim Berners-Lee has spoken a lot about at this conference, it is such a great tool for access. And we're seeing so much change that's happening for the good, but we also need to make sure that the young people feel like what they're putting into it, they're also getting something out. I think collectively and through collaboration and through real strong targeted communication, we'll be able to try and change some of the narratives. But I speak from the heart and speak for if I could do one thing to stop a 13-year-old girl looking at her Instagram account and feeling like the society and her community is not there to support her, then I did that one thing. And I wish that I was sort of more of an academic, but I think we've had a lot of great panels in this room particularly about how the fake news, the cyberbullying agenda is really starting to change so that everybody can feel protected, not just those that are interested in using it for social good, but those that are interested in how they want to build their businesses or how they want to have that communication. I believe in community, I believe in collaboration, and I think with those two things, we can really support the next generation to feel like they have a mouthpiece for good.
You said that young people should speak out. You spoke out, and I believe you went to your mother. Was she a good support for you?
Yes, she's been through a lot, and she's been. I would describe her as a philanthropreneur, really, and I think that, especially when you are, when you're a young person, you're navigating lots of different challenges. When I've spoken about this in other events as well, for example at We Day, which is a great movement, which is all about getting young people into social action and very much using technology as a place for good. So in schools, they have to do one local action and one global action, and as a thank you, they are invited to celebrate at We Days across the world. And I've been on that stage, and I've seen the young people that are there that are willing participants and ready to challenge and make the step towards change. And that's what that's what I'd like to provide the tools to do. And social media and the communication and finding your right message. And Cynthia, I completely agree with you. Using it as something that you can be authentic with and speak from the heart, that's the recipe for success.
Fantastic. Yeah, I know you've had problems as well with cyberbullying, being picked on, for example, when your husband's lost a match or for other issues. If you'd like to tell us about that. How do you protect yourself and your children while also using social media to really promote the foundation?
Well, I don't think there is a recipe for success because we're still testing social media and social networks as they are and how they impact our lives. The only thing for me personally and from my family is that we need to remember that social media has opened us towards other people's opinions, which are not necessarily important in our lives. Meaning that it's very important that you create your micro world, which will, your environment that will help you thrive, and then other people's opinions will not, generally affect you, but that's such a huge thing to ask. Obviously, we are affected, and you just have to work on yourself, I guess. That's the only way I defend against cyberbullying, and I think probably the children should too.
Cynthia, what advice do you give to people when they are being bullied, they're being trolled online? What advice do you give to them?
The first thing you do is report that person. Once you've reported them, don't block them. You don't know if they're crazy. Report them. Well, it depends on the situation because a lot of people put their location everywhere. And so when you block someone, it is very easy to create a new account, figure out where someone is. And if it is a certain situation, which I've actually been in years ago, where someone is trying to find where you are, then you've upset them. It's much better to make the social media site aware because that's what they're there for. It's their responsibility to help you. Absolutely report them and avoid blocking. You can always remove their messages. If it's mild and it's just a difference of opinion and you are using your social media for a certain cause, have a conversation with that person because there's very few times where you address the question or the accusation where that person won't have a conversation with you. They're on your page. They're obviously interested in something about you, even if it's from a negative end, and you can actually flip that around. And the last thing is really more for parents and people around that person, because when someone says something negative to you, you're going to take it in and you're going to hold it, and you want to be that strong person, but none of us are. If someone here tweets or Instagrams me later and says something horrible, it's going to hurt my feelings no matter how strong I am. But just be aware of their page. When you see something, say something, make it a conversation so that it's not just being held inside. Get it out, talk about it.
Great, thank you. And I think we've got some questions coming in from the floor. Just before that, how do you make sure going forward, you can't say it's done, it's dusted, you've got your following, how do you make sure you keep an audience engaged? How do you keep getting that message out there?
In this scenario of using it for philanthropy, I think we've got so much that we need to achieve in this world, and I think that if the audience is developing, the young people are developing, we've also got to keep going as well, and be authentic and be true to your passions. And Cynthia, I really loved your point what you just brought up just then about not holding it inside. And I think we also need to make sure that as we do everything, that we have an online and an offline place to be able to share some of the challenges.
Yeah, now how do you keep building your audience? How do you keep your audience engaged?
Well, I'm actually enjoying so much the conversation here. Well, I guess with the content that, I find it very important to be truthful to who you are, not pretending to, there are lots of requests, do this, do that, and then you become somebody who you are not. And the foundations in particular, they need to stick to their vision and their mission and not what's popular, because that's completely sending the different message to the donors and to the recipients in any way. As for the individual brands, just being authentic, being you in everything you do, and then you will find your niche, and that niche will respect who you are, and your message will be, more impactful.
Cynthia?
I think it's a little different for me, because I have a following for a different reason. And that's important to understand, is why people follow you. So it's because you're you, or you're doing something, or there's a part of your life that people are really attracted to. For me, it's always been an educational process. So a community conversation, discussing, keeping people involved in what is going on and what I'm doing. And that's where the follower base came from. So education, conversation are really important for me.
And if I can ask you, what is your one favorite example of where social media has been used for good, where it's created good? Princess Beatrice?
Actually, one of my favorite examples is a charity that I work with called Charity Water. They launched themselves very much in this social media world. And one of my favorite examples is last year I worked with them, and we built a well in Ethiopia. And every time that I go onto my well, I get a geotag alert on my Twitter account. So I know exactly that when I got involved with them, I know exactly where my money went, and I know that how many people are benefiting from the well that I was able to partner with Charity Water to achieve. So that's a very small thing about how it can be used for good in terms of this reporting systems and measurement and impact measurement, because measurement's key. So that's a really good, that's a very personal example.
Yellen, you mentioned the flood appeal for a start. Another example of where social media is being used for good that really stood out in your mind?
There are quite a few, actually, and I enjoyed just a recent fundraising campaign that happened as a spontaneous reaction to the immigration that happened, the separation of the families on the borders of Mexico, where a couple has opened a page and they've raised over $20 million on Facebook, which was remarkable, and they've supported the charity called Races, which is paying legal fees and trying to unite families together. I also have enjoyed seeing the movements with the hashtags that people generally connect, which is Me Too movement, or you even have the Giving Tuesday as a great example of how many foundations are using certain hashtags to create the conversations and then lead people to that direction. And Giving Tuesday brings millions of dollars to the different organizations. I can go on, but they're funny.
Thank you. Thank you. And Cynthia?
No, we're out of time. I worked on this nonprofit that these two little girls had something called Batten's disease, and they were sisters. It's 100% fatal, extremely rare. And we got a group of people together that sat around a table and said, okay, how do we save these little girls' lives? No one cares about this cause. And we went out to all of these celebrities, and it was really interesting, and the reason I bring this up, we were able to raise $7 million in the first year and actually save the girls. They're still living. The interesting part was that we had all of these celebrities sharing it, and there was a drop-off point. And I'm a little bit nerdy, so it turned out that if you just changed how people were able to donate, if it was 1 click versus 2 clicks versus 3, it would increase donations overall. And then the second thing is that people put a lot of pressure on the celebrities to donate themselves because they were sharing it. And I thought that was really interesting because even if they weren't initially going to donate, once they had shared it, they felt a pressure from their audience to then either match or donate after. So that's my favorite. It's the Charlotte and Gwyneth Gray Foundation. Small plug.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And we've run out of time. So Cynthia, Yelena, and Princess Beatrice, thank you very much indeed for your time today.
Thank you so much.